Hi, I'm George Pino, the CEO of Commercial Brokers International. I'm sitting here with one of our agents, Adrian Perez, who actually comes from us as a small business owner background. And, we were having a conversation the other day, and he actually asked me about SBA financing, whether or not, he had questions coming from a owner or tenant's perspective or a small business owner's perspective of whether or not leasing is better versus purchasing their own property. So I thought we'd go into it, and I thought this would be a great video for education purposes for everybody else out there as well.
I believe so.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
Okay.
So what are some of your questions when it comes to this? And, I know you told me yesterday that you wish someone had, when you were in the small business world, you wish someone had actually approached you and talked a little bit about what benefits and negatives there might be when it comes to owning your own properties.
Correct. So I think that for me, it would have definitely been very helpful if a broker or an agent reached out to me and said, "Hey, these are your options of leasing the space or purchasing."
Sure.
And I think that would have really been so much helpful, and it really would have helped me make my decisions that would have been more beneficiary for me and my business.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I think that, education is definitely the key component here.
Absolutely.
And, a lot of times a tenant doesn't realize or an owner doesn't realize of a business what benefits are there when it comes to SBA if they were to purchase their own property versus continuing leasing the property.
Right.
So, what I'd like to do is kind of go into a little bit of the positives and also some of the negatives, what to be aware of, but more importantly, trying to more inform so that clients can make an informed decision. And then if we have any more questions, maybe you can ask at the end as well.
Correct.
So, for a owner-user situation, almost always it is more beneficial for them to own the property than for them to lease the property. Now, the caveat for that is if they're planning on staying at that location for less than 5 years. In that scenario, it may be better for them to lease. But long-term wise, there's all these benefits that you, as an owner of a property, will have. The biggest hurdle, though, that you have to overcome is the down payment. So a lot of people don't want to look at down payment because typically commercial real estate, it requires a 35% down. And a lot of people don't have that. I mean, even a small office building or a small retail building in a major metropolitan area can be $1 million. So instead, though, I would look into SBA financing, so small business administration. So this is where a owner-user that has a past track record, at least 2 years in business, can show that they are going to occupy this space and that they can afford the mortgage payments based upon their past income for the last 2 years, can go in and purchase a property for just 10% down, as little as 10% down. So that opens the door for a lot of people. Now, here are the benefits. In a lease, rent is almost always increasing every year.
Correct.
You have typical annual increases, 3% to 5%, CPI in some cases nowadays, but there's almost always a rental increase. When you purchase your property, your payments are flat because you have a mortgage that doesn't change. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. You can actually forecast a little bit better what's happening in the current market conditions. The next thing is you don't have to worry about having an unexpected expense passed through to you. Like, for instance, if a property is reassessed or sold in California, it gets reassessed for tax purposes. As a retail tenant, you may have triple net expense reimbursements. You may not be anticipating that. Then all of a sudden, your expenses can increase 50, 70 cents a square foot or more just because the property was sold and you had nothing to do. You don't get any additional services. You don't get anything else other than an additional expense. So, you don't have to worry about that when it comes to your owning the property. Now, you are going to be responsible for all the maintenance, repairs, and other expenses as well if you own the property. So, generally speaking, you are the cost of ownership is a little bit higher. But what offsets that is you actually get to depreciate the building as well. And in addition to depreciate the building, you can also write off the interest that you're paying on the mortgage. So, make sure you check with your CPA that all these deductions are available to you, but that will offset the ownership. And when you look at it, the cost of ownership is actually typically a little bit less then when you take a look at take all of that into account.
Right.
Your out of pocket may be a little bit more, but at the end of the year, when you take into account the depreciation and your not just depreciation but also your interest expenses and write-offs that you have from ownership of a building, then your cost is actually lower. More importantly, you may lease a place for 10, 15 years. And all you have to show for it if you lease the space is, I have a really good address for the last 10, 15
Right.
years. If that property goes up in value, you don't get to share that with the landlord.
No.
Okay. However, if you own your building, it does.
Of course.
Okay. Also, one of the things that people don't calculate because it's not really it's not really money they see right away is what we call something called gain on equity. So gain on equity is, part of your mortgage payment pays the interest, which, as we talked about, is a write-off.
Correct.
But also part of it goes in toward paying down the principal. So as you pay down the principal of the loan, let's say it's that $1 million loan, you had a $900,000 loan on it, and each one of your payments after maybe 10 years, you may have paid down $200,000 or $300,000 of that loan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that essentially is money that you put into a bank account, because if you go to sell the property, you have less to pay off on the loan.
Right.
So you're essentially creating a bank account, or more importantly, it allows you 10 years from now, if it's a downturn market or your business is having a hard time, or maybe you're looking to expand, you want to expand into another market. It allows you to tap into the equity that you've built on that property and use that by refinancing and expand your business or help your business out. Also, when you look at it that way, there's also appreciation that you're going to get. Typically speaking, most properties on average, obviously the real estate is cyclical in the business, but if you look at averages, you're looking at about a 2% appreciation a year. So when you look at it that way, and the return on your investment on that $1 million property, yes, it appreciates 2%. And that doesn't sound like much. It's $20,000 or $20,000 off the $1 million. But remember, you only put $100,000 down, so your return on your investment, which is the $100,000, is 20%. 20,000 or 20% increase or 2% increase, $20,000. So you're actually doing pretty well for that return as well. So you got to take all that into consideration, and when you do, I think that's when you realize that the cost of ownership more than outweighs the leasing and the benefits that you get that way as well. Now, leasing does provide benefits as well. Leasing allows you to be perhaps a little bit more nimble when it comes to expansion, because you're only tied into a space for 3 or 5 years or so. And at the end of 5 years, if you need more space, if it's a larger building, you can go to the landlord and just say, add on space or move to it. If they don't have the space, you can move to another location. You can't really do that if you own the building.
Correct.
So, really, it depends on what your business plans are and what you're looking to do to accomplish those goals.
Question.
Yeah.
Going back on the SBA financing. So you just have to have existing 2 years in business to apply for SBA financing?
Well, a couple things. SBA financing, they want to see at least 2 years that you've been in business and profitable. Okay, so the profitability factor comes into play in that they want to make sure that you have a track record of making money to actually pay for the mortgage. Okay, that's their safety net.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, they may require cross-collateralization, meaning sometimes SBA lenders will ask, since they're loaning on such a high leverage amount, they may ask for one of your other properties or principal residence to be cross-collateralized and guarantee the loan as well. So there's a little bit of risk there. But also, when it comes to the SBA financing, one of the things to take into consideration is that you also have to occupy at least 51% of the space, or a little bit over 50% of the space. So, those all have to match up and go in. So they're going to look at 2 years track record history. You can't be a nonprofit, it has to be for profit.
Okay.
Okay. And you're looking at, and it has to be a small business. So you actually have a max. Maximum is about essentially it's a $4 million max on acquisition. So it's still pretty darn
That's
good.
pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty damn good.
Here's a great thing also. You know, a lot of times if you're going into a space and you're trying to customize it on a lease, you may be responsible for what they call the tenant improvements, the, you know, new carpeting, new whatever. SBA financing can actually roll that into the financing. So you can actually finance part of that as well at the same 90% leverage, as long as you're under that $4 million mark. So let's say you bought that property for $1 million and you want to put $100,000 to upgrade it and make it your office or your dental suite or whatever it may be. And you can take that and add, it's now $1.1 million, and they'll loan off that $1.1 million.
Okay. Great. So a good question that I think small business owners would like to know, them partnering with us, partnering with CBI, what are some of the benefits when they're looking at they're looking to either lease or purchase? How can we assist them or facilitate their process?
Well, I mean, whether CBI or any brokerage company, and you know, a good brokerage company is going to ask questions about their business, what their plans are, what their goals are, whether they, you know, what long-term goals, short-term goals, and whether or not what is the right opportunity then at that point, whether it might be leasing, whether it might be, you know, have you thought about purchasing, or, you know, there's a whole gamut of different ways that we can actually advise a client on what might be best for their short, medium, and long-term goals. But the key is most brokerage companies don't ask the right questions. So you want to make sure that you're working with a broker that asks questions about your business or their business so that they understand what your goals are. Otherwise, all they're doing is finding a property for you and not really advising you.
Yeah.
They might help you with the negotiations, which we do as well, but you know, you really want to have someone that's taking that extra step that really understands your business as well.
Because now being on this side of commercial real estate, I see all the benefits of partnering with the broker and kind of going over some of my goals would have really have eliminated so much headache.
Yeah. Well, you know, I love the perspective that you bring from a owner user standpoint when you were, you know, you had your own small business, and I love that perspective because I think it opens your eyes a little bit more as to like, oh wow, I could have done that. Darn. You know, or so, and that's where, you know, the different options and opportunities lie. But you want to make sure that you're using an experienced broker, or at least a broker with an experienced team behind them that can help guide you to the right type of deal. So thanks for tuning in. I hope this was informative for you. If you did like the video, please subscribe. Heck, you know what? If you didn't even like the video, subscribe. I'll make sure I get a better one. Just put it in your comments.